This hearing is required under Indiana Code and is for the purpose of providing taxpayers the opportunity to make recommendations to the department that administer tax laws in our state. This hearing is not a news conference or a media opportunity, nor is it a forum to debate Indiana tax laws. Those are established by the Indiana General Assembly, which is conveniently located across the street. This is an opportunity for the public to suggest improvements in tax services and processing. We are always looking to improve our services, the taxpayer, and we are very interested in hearing your ideas and suggestions. If you wish to make a statement, please provide me with your name if you've not already done so. You will be called up to address the Commissioner. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the Commissioner of the Indiana Department of Revenue, Adam Kraut.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the 2019 Department of Revenue Public Hearing. As Emily said, my name is Adam Kraut, and I'm in my third year serving as the Department's Commissioner. I am joined today by our Chief Communications Officer, Emily Landis, who we've heard from already, our Chief Information Officer, Kevin Gully, who oversees Project Next Door, which you will hear about today, as well as all of our IT systems and operations, our Chief Operating Officer, Bob Grennis, who is responsible for returns processing, customer service, audit operations, motor carrier services division, among others. Our Chief Financial Officer, Ed Vance, who has contracts, procurement services, and our agency's budget. The Director of our Taxpayer Advocate Office, which is a statutory creation, Tammy Jones, and our Executive Director of Customer Service, Monique Young-Walsh. Also joining us today are several members of our team, including some of those that you see on the screen today. It is such an honor to lead the department alongside this group of individuals, including our entire employee base of 700 good Hoosiers. With regard to our leadership team, again, going back to the slide you see on the screen, as well as the individuals in front of the room, something we are very proud of is the fact that most of our leadership team has been in place since 2017 as part of this new administration. This past year has been an historic year for the department. We are 76 days away from the initial rollout of what has been billed a once-in-a-generation IT system modernization that we have actually talked about for the past 2 years in this forum and even prior to that. Now, the array of pictures you see on the screen is taken directly from our website, which is in.gov/DOR. That website was completely updated in May in partnership with Indiana's Office of Technology. Our new website is in part why this year's public hearing is given in more of a presentation mode as opposed to just prepared remarks from the table. Because there are many changes to both style and content on our website that we wanted to highlight today. One last item of note as part of our introduction today, and speaking of our website, as you can see on the bottom right is our customer service online feedback option. This was made available in October of 2018. This allows anyone to reach out to us electronically, either anonymously or by leaving their contact information so that they can share observations, provide feedback, both including customer criticism and our favorite, positive reinforcement. It also allows individuals to request a personal follow-up from the department. And we are proud to say that as of yesterday, 300 submissions have come through this particular customer feedback portal. And every single one of those has been reviewed by our team. And when requested, we have provided a personal response and a follow-up to the items that they have expressed concern or merely made questions about. Notably, the Federation of Tax Administrators, commonly referred to as FTA, which is sort of the national governing body of which we are a member, they will be recognizing Indiana, specifically our department, at their annual national conference of all state revenue agencies here in Indianapolis next week with an award. In fact, the award will be specifically for this online customer feedback portal. The judges in the competition actually made the observation they were brave to take this on. They aren't afraid to get feedback, which is very true. Most agencies should do it, but there is always a fear of irrational public backlash. Okay. On this point, we very proudly say that we welcome all feedback, good and bad, as we use it all the time just to get better. Because as we get better, it betters the agency, which only benefits those we serve, the taxpayers of Indiana. So, Let's talk a little bit about workplace culture before we dive into the specific statistics about filing season and customer service and revenue collections, for example. So a couple of years ago, we committed to embarking on a journey of transformational change for the Department of Revenue. Not only were we going to prepare an organization of nearly 700 public servants to modernize, meaning changing everything they do as part of their day-to-day practice, primarily, of course, through modern technology, but we set out to cultivate and build a healthy organization by changing what most had experienced up to that point. Everything from their day-to-day cultural experience with the organization was set to change, and we invited everybody to go on this journey with us, and here we are 2.5 years later to talk about how that's going. Now, in the past, in this particular forum, we've talked about changing the mission and vision statements for the organization, but this past year we took things a step further and introduced our core values. Now, importantly, these core values on the screen, fun, leadership, integrity, respect, teamwork, service, and continuous improvement, are a product of the people that make up the department's culture. It's not just a product of the leadership team. And this was not a group of individuals that came in and said, here are your core values. Folks from every business unit within the organization played a role in developing our values. And we expanded on the core values beyond just words, but to attach behavior statements to those, so that every employee could be aware of exactly what we're expecting when we talk about these values. So for example, what does teamwork mean for the Department of Revenue? Okay. As you can see on the slide, when we talk about teamwork, we focus on we, not me. Similarly, integrity is a core value for the department, has its listed behavior statement. Always do what is right, take action when it is not. We believe that we are changing what it means to be a public employee in the state of Indiana through our actions. Not our words, not posters in the hallway, or things that we put on our website, but our actions. And importantly, these 7 core values are embedded within everything that we do. All of our decisions, our strategies, and the actions taken by the Department of Revenue. In fact, employee performance is evaluated in the context of these 7 core values. It is so much easier to have a coaching moment or a teaching opportunity when you can tie that back to a core value in a conversation with any individual. Okay, so I mentioned it's been a historic year for the department. A couple of weeks ago, in what we view as an acknowledgement and validation of the intense focus that has been placed on building a positive culture over the past couple of years, the department became the first Indiana state agency to appear in the Indy Star's Top Workplaces list. This list is comprised of organizations that allow their entire employee base to be surveyed anonymously, on topics such as culture, communication, leadership, direction, job satisfaction, and meaningfulness and value. As you can see from the cover of this year's version, it says a positive workplace culture is key, and at the Department of Revenue, we could not agree more. As we stated in this forum back in 2017, culture and customer service are intimately connected. You simply cannot deliver great customer service if you don't have a healthy organization underlying all of your operations. Last year, after believing we were comfortable enough with our progress toward culture, one that we could be proud of, in this forum specifically, we officially rebranded publicly as a customer service agency. We weren't going to simply be another government agency or a government operation. We wanted to be known as a customer service agency. Now, that said, there will always be opportunities for improvement. Folks around the state remind us of that often. And I will state here that we will never, and I repeat never, be perfect. Okay? But we believe strongly that it is not mere coincidence that our service levels have improved across the board since we placed an emphasis on culture. Having said all that, and while those in leadership roles for the department continue to study key leadership principles, build necessary skill sets to lead people, and challenge themselves to grow as individuals, we always prioritize our statutory charge as an organization, which is to collect the great majority of Indiana's revenue and to process millions of tax returns, the majority of which generate a refund for Hoosiers every year. So, let's take a look at our operations over the course of the past year up to this point. Now, before we go to the next slide, initially I want to point out that the data you will see is for the current fiscal year, which ends on June 30th, okay? And that is through June 7th to this point. So stated differently, these numbers that you're about to see are not complete for the fiscal year, but we wanted to provide a preview of what fiscal year 2019's tax receipts look like with 1 month to go. Last fiscal year's tax receipts totaled $19.87 billion. And for the department's reporting purposes, that includes just over $2.6 billion collected and distributed through local income tax. An important distinction from numbers you might see from the state budget agency from time to time in terms of how the two entities report their numbers. But our overall number also includes food and beverage and county innkeepers' receipts, because those are distributed to corresponding counties and municipalities from the department. So as you can see, through June 7th, fiscal year 2019's tax receipts have totaled just over $19 billion at the bottom of the screen there. And based on projections, we expect that number to rise above last year's $19.87 billion total. Now within that number, per usual, the biggest portion of that total comes from sales and use tax, which at this time, just about $7.8 billion. Okay? Makes up 39% of the total. Individual adjusted gross income tax makes up the second largest portion, which is about 29% of the total revenue that you see on the screen. We typically feature these 8 categories in terms of our tax receipts in our annual report, which is due to the governor every year by October 1st. One additional item of note is that the increase in corporate income tax receipts is up from $698 million last fiscal year already to over $800 million this year, with still 1 month to go. Okay, so before we move on to filing season statistics, and we'll go to the next slide, what I want to mention is that there was one item in particular that was billed as the biggest development in sales tax administration in a generation. And that, for those that know, is the United States Supreme Court's landmark decision, almost 1 year ago today, June 21st of last year, is South Dakota v. Wayfair. Okay? And this is the road seller matter concerning out-of-state businesses without a physical presence in Indiana who are selling goods into our state. The case overturned precedent set over 25 years ago, which, until Wayfair, did not obligate those out-of-state businesses to collect and remit sales tax back to Indiana. Now that changed last fall. So now out-of-state businesses meeting a certain threshold for sales into Indiana, as set forth in the Indiana Code, are obligated to collect Indiana's 7% sales tax and remit that money to the department. Indiana was importantly part of an initial grouping of states that implemented this groundbreaking change for tax administration back in October of 2018. And based on registrations that we have been able to track thus far, the state was due an estimated additional $25 million for the October through December 2018 period. And that is specific to out-of-state tax coming in as a result of the Wayfair decision. Through the first quarter of 2019, our data reflects another $25 to $26 million in estimated tax due from those out-of-state businesses. Now, as you can see, this is also from our website, so we have an entire page dedicated to the Wayfair decision, which includes a short video for those businesses who now need to register here in Indiana, what their obligations are, and it answers some of the frequently asked questions that we get on a rolling basis. Okay, so regarding filing season, question is always, well, how did you do? How do we know how we did? Well, we measure ourselves, okay? It is worth noting that returns are filed throughout the entire year, but for purposes of our presentation today, we are primarily talking about returns filed from January through April, specifically tax day, including those filed late. So, as we look at the slide, the department thus far on the individual tax return side has processed 3.2 million individual income tax returns. Also, an additional 164,654 corporate returns. Now, importantly, of those, over 2 million have generated a refund. And the average state of Indiana refund this year totals $329. So for frame of reference, that's just $4 less than the average state of Indiana refund was last year. So how do we measure ourselves and hold ourselves accountable on the returns processing side? Because that's critical to our service delivery. So for electronically filed returns generating a refund, we expect to have those processed within 14 calendar days. Now, assuming there are no errors or no additional documentation is requested or necessary, which would cause delay, you can see on the screen that 94.9% of those are filed and processed within 14 days. The average is just under 10 calendar days. We think that's very good. And throughout the country, our peers in the tax administration world will tell us that these are some of the most progressive numbers that they see. We're very aggressive in how we process because we want to get the refunds out, but we are also doing fraud checks behind the scenes to make sure that those refunds are getting into the proper hands. So going back to the number of the percentage within 14 days at 94.9%, again, those are standard. Now, if we included all returns, which adds in those that are suspended for additional review, manual review might be required, additional documentation is necessary. That number drops a little, but it still hovers above 90%. Okay, our goal is 90% or better, and we always speak in terms of those that are standard process. But even when you include those with exceptions, we're above 90%. We're very proud of that. Notably, in 2019, over 89% of Hoosiers are utilizing electronic filing methods. We're seeing that number increase 0.5% to a full percent just about every year. Now, for those filing on paper in 2019 and expecting a refund, the department's currently processing those on average within 26 calendar days. Again, these are for those standard returns that come in without exceptions. And that number also shows that our benchmark, which is 60 calendar days, is at 99.9%. Okay? Almost every return that comes to us through paper is processed within that benchmark of 60 days, in terms of having generated a refund. Now, if we include all paper returns, including those with exceptions, again, the number drops a little, but in this case, it only drops to 98%. That number in 2018 was much closer to 83%. So on the processing side, you have seen that the numbers have improved. The way we have streamlined and made things more efficient, the data is starting to back that up. On the topic of filing, we also want to make mention of the Indiana Free File program, something that we do every year that we continue to promote and we will continue to promote because it's available to Hoosiers below a certain adjusted gross income threshold. As our website indicates, and again, this is another example of what is found on our new website. Okay? The Free File program was developed in 2003 in collaboration between the IRS and several tax preparation software vendors. Indiana is one of many states that participate in the Free File program. And in doing so, we allow certified vendors to post their information on our website. Can't see it on this screen, but typically when you scroll down, you will see the icons for each of the vendors that participate and have been certified by Indiana for the Free File program. The adjusted gross income thresholds vary from vendor to vendor. And importantly, the department is not directly involved in the policies surrounding the Free File program. It's merely an additional filing option that we offer on our website as part of the Free File Alliance, so that Hoosiers have all of the options at their disposal. Here in Indiana, our data shows that over 2 million Hoosiers qualify for the Free File program. Now, importantly, if you qualify, you can file both federal and state returns for free. Okay? But unfortunately, just 87,826 of those over 2 million elected to participate as of June 10th of this year. That is admittedly a small utilization rate. It is, however, up 6% from last year. So the department will continue to promote the Free File option before and during filing season through various channels, including social media, posters in our satellite offices, as well as other agency offices and libraries throughout the state of Indiana, and on-air reminders during tax season whenever we make a radio appearance. One more thing to touch upon, operationally at least, as part of filing season, is our fraud prevention program, which continues to be among the best in the country. Through 2019, the stats, which are on the screen, are as follows, primarily in terms of fraudulent credits and deductions. Again, these are attempts that have been made that the department has stopped before generating that refund. That number this year up to this point is just over $5.5 million. Just below that, you can see we have stopped, importantly, over $700,000 in attempted stolen identity refund fraud. That's where an individual files a tax return with someone else's identity, trying to then generate a refund that gets distributed to them in hopes that it doesn't go to the rightful owner. And then when that individual files a return generating a refund, the fraudster would like us to think that the person who then is legitimate is the one trying to commit fraud. That number is down through the same period as last year, which we view as a great thing. Okay, that means fewer people are trying to commit fraud through tax returns in the state of Indiana, at least on the stolen identity side. Importantly, the big number that we want to highlight here up in the top right is the total attempted fraud via refunds that the department has stopped. And that is $6,236,635. One point on this slide to just put things in perspective, back up to this identity fraud refund attempted. And this year you see $713,000, which is a decrease from last year. It's an enormous decrease from 2014, when this entire program was instituted at the Department of Revenue. In that initial year, you would see numbers closer to $88 million. That's because so many people were trying to commit fraud through tax returns, generating refunds here in Indiana. That number has steadily gone down to the point where we feel comfortable, not only with our operation, which we believe is one of the best in the country, but also that those attempting to commit fraud here in Indiana have gone elsewhere, okay? So other states are now also starting to put in fraud analytics and attempts to monitor this particular activity. So the Department of Revenue over the last 5 years has stopped over $115 million in attempted fraud through refunds, but that number continues to go down on an individual year-by-year basis, and that is something to be proud of. Now, as we go to the next slide, on the more commonly thought of traditional customer service side of our operation, referring specifically to our call center and our walk-in facilities, the numbers speak for themselves, as you can see on the screen. Again, this is sort of through June 13th, our staff has answered 336,609 phone calls. And we have staff all over the state, not just in Indianapolis, in our headquarters. We also have a facility out at returns processing where people take calls. And then we have 11 field offices throughout the state of Indiana where people are on the phones trying to assist users. We are often asked, how long should I expect to wait when I'm going to call the Department of Revenue? And as you can understand, I'm sure this number fluctuates. And it fluctuates a lot during peak filing season. But overall, if you look at all of our call gates, which includes everything from stolen identity quiz letters that we send out, where someone just calls in if they don't want to go online, answers a couple of questions, and we verify their identity, all the way to a complex corporate return. The average speed to answer in 2019 is 14 minutes and 54 seconds. Okay? We always strive to do better, and there are days where those numbers are higher than that, and it certainly depends on which call gate you are in. But nonetheless, we believe anything below 15 minutes in terms of an overall average, given the volume and number of calls that we take, is tremendous. Additionally, the average call length is a statistic that people are interested in sometimes. And as you can see, if you call us, you can expect to be on the phone for just over 5 minutes. And we like to tell people you don't have to dedicate your entire hour lunch break, for example, to committing to being on the phone with us. Our numbers show that the average call length is 5 minutes. Two other pieces of data that I want to share with you that are not on the slide. How many customers have we served in those walk-in facilities? So face-to-face interactions with customers where we are serving the Hoosiers. 19,637 customers have walked in our doors thus far in 2019. And additionally, behind the scenes, because we do process a lot of mail, okay, 34,405 pieces of correspondence have been processed. Now, those stats are from January 1 through June 13th. They will only continue to rise in terms of the customers served through our walk-in facilities and the amount of correspondence that we process every day. It is an enormous volume for our staff relative to our headcount, and we continue to be proud of the great strides they have made to improve customer service. All part of, becoming that agency that is known for delivering best-in-class customer service. Next, we're going to talk about Project Nextdoor briefly. I am not the IT expert at the department, but I'm going to give you an overview of Project Nextdoor, which we have referred to in the past as our modernization project. This is a brand that we have created. Our modernization journey is all about the next generation of the Department of Revenue. There will come a time when people look back on the days prior to September 2019 when you interacted with the department in a different way. And the same will hold true for our staff in terms of how they process correspondence, how they enter information, how they communicate with our customers as they are learning a new system of record for the first time in over 25 years. On the next slide, you're going to see two logos. The first is the Indiana tax system. That's our internal system of record. Okay, it's going to replace RPS, which is the revenue processing system. That's been the system that we've had in place for nearly 25 years. We are replacing that completely on the internal side. So our staff will be working with ITS to process all of the transactions and interact with our customers. Importantly for the public is the icon next to it, which is InTime, the Indiana Taxpayer Information Management Engine. That will be a 24/7, 365, assuming everything goes as planned, 24/7, 365 customer portal where you can log in with a username and password and perform all sorts of transactions. Correspondence will be able to be exchanged. You can look at prior history, basically do all of the things folks have wanted to do at the Department of Revenue here in Indiana for a long time. Other states have similar options. They have customer portals where people can log in and do things themselves. E-services, functionality, if you will, and our time has come to roll this out this year. So we'll go to the next slide. At a high level, though, and first just talk about Project Nextdoor and what the public can expect in terms of timing for the overall project scope. As I said earlier, we are 76 days away from rollout of phase 1. And on the screen, you can see rollout 1 is corporate, so all things corporate income tax. Okay, and we are going to go live in September of this year. Okay, each Labor Day for the next 3 years will be an additional rollout. So rollout 1, corporate income taxes. As you can see right after that is rollout 2, predominantly sales and withholding, which will be Labor Day of next year. And then right after that, rollout 3, which is important. That's the big one in terms of most folks, in terms of the volume. They're all important, but in terms of the volume is the individual income tax. That is rollout 3. We will go live with that on Labor Day of 2021. And then lastly, we have rollout 4, which is what we refer to as special taxes. Cigarette tax, alcohol, aircraft, you name it, those are part of our special taxes in probably the summer of 2022. We think we can do this less than 4 years. But that's where we are, and across the bottom, importantly, which is what makes this such a challenge, not just for the organization in terms of leadership and IT systems, but for our entire staff, is that we have to keep the legacy environment operating throughout the course of this entire modernization journey. Okay? So there will be 2 systems running behind the scenes. And while we will be in the new modernized environment for corporate income taxes, we will be in the legacy environment for individual income taxes until we get to rollout 3. So our staff, especially at the customer service level, and people who are on the phones, will be navigating at times back and forth between 2 systems. So we are challenging them, again, in ways they have not been challenged before. So specific to rollout 1, Not going to spend too much time on this, but I wanted to give everybody an idea of how strategic this particular rollout is, which you will see in 2 and 3 and 4 as well. Making sure the department has covered all bases in every step of the process in terms of a strict timeline, making sure as we advance to the next phase that we're ready and our staff feel comfortable. So currently, if you look sort of in the middle just to the right, you see number 6, also to the side, number 5, business testing, but train the trainer, April through June, and then end-to-end testing. That's sort of where we are right now. Our staff is being trained to then train their colleagues and peers throughout the department. What we did not want to do is bring in an outside third party to do all the training for our entire staff. So as mentioned last year, we have Fast Enterprises, and they are on the journey with us to supply the system of record. And they have been a wonderful partner to work with. And they are training folks who will then ultimately train the rest of our staff. We believe that is very important for consistency and transparency and feeling like this is an all-hands-on-deck type of project for the organization. So, when we talk about Project Next Door overall, with Rollout 1, again, September 3rd of 2019, you can see in the gray box, those are the specific tax types that will be part of this rollout. Generally speaking, we say corporate income tax. So what does that mean? And you can see the list there. We've actually added in a couple of our aircraft taxes, but you see C Corp, financial institutions, nonprofits, partnership, S Corp, and then utility receipts taxes. Any transaction in the world of those specific delineated tax types will be part of Rollout 1 in the new modernized environment. Okay? But we also put on the slide here things that we like to talk to the public about and tell everyone why are we doing this. This is not simply the case of, well, we're ready for a new computer system. Okay? We've had it for a while, so let's spend money to get a new one. This is a system of need, okay? And we put some of those, not just needs, but benefits, so that people can see clearly how this system will change the department and benefit all of Hoosiers throughout Indiana. So we've already talked about the enhanced online customer portal. Okay? That will allow Hoosiers to view past payments and past returns. That is something that we hear all the time that people aren't able to do. It's a request we've gotten for years, and it's something that's now coming as part of InTime. Electronic filing of tax returns that are currently submitted on paper. Folks that file corporate returns, this is sort of music to their ears. Okay, for the 2.5 years that I have been in this role, one of the most common issues, concerns, requests comes from corporations and people that file corporate returns to say, when are we going to be able to do this electronically? Well, here we are in Rollout 1, and that's coming just after Labor Day here in 2019. The ability to file amended or corrected returns electronically is another big one. Now this is, with all these benefits, these are for the entire project, not all just Rollout 1. So when we go live with Rollout 3 and individuals are filing their returns, we will allow amended returns to come through. Okay, right now, amended returns are done on paper, which takes much longer. Okay, so people file, it's processed quickly, electronically, and then it's amended, and the next thing you don't know what happens for a few months. That is a very manual, intensive process. We will allow the ability to file amended returns. And then lastly, validation and transparency of revenue disbursements and reporting to local units of government. We can't overstate the importance of this. We work with local units of government every day, as mentioned earlier, as part of distributing local income taxes, but also food and beverage taxes and county innkeeper taxes. We often are asked for reports, and in today's environment, we have individuals who will generate those reports, perhaps send them via email. In the new environment, what we will do through InTime is we will allow the local units of government to also have a login and password and their own account in InTime so that they can go in and get those reports that have the information that they so desperately need and desire on a monthly basis, as opposed to having to ask for it all the time. Okay? So drilling down just a little bit deeper, this shows you in terms of the modernized e-filing functionality environment of rollout 1. It's green for those that can't see. The green boxes are things that we offer today. So I'm not going to go into all these, but the important thing is anything that's gold is something that we don't offer today because our current system is not equipped to do that. But through the new system, you'll get everything on the screen, including the green, which will stay, but also the gold. So filing, amending, paying will all go through this new modernized environment. And then on more of the e-services functionality, in terms of what customers can actually do once they're logged into InTime. Again, the gold boxes are things that we do not offer today. But the gold boxes are things people will be able to do every day from the comfort of their office or home when they log into this customer service portal. So whether it's registering for e-services, viewing prior information that we talked about, filing and amending, importantly, those amended returns, making payments, which as you can see, we do offer methods for paying with DOR Pay. We also have in-tax pay throughout the year. But also on that last column, one that's important, is viewing correspondence, sending and receiving messages, okay, and updating names and addresses. Okay, that column is something that should be a no-brainer and something that should just be standard operating procedure in 2019. Unfortunately, that entire column is old, okay, which means that's going to be new functionality, but that's good news. Okay, we are merely months away from offering that, at least as part of rollout 1, and eventually to everyone throughout the state of Indiana. But on the correspondence side, the one item I want to address with that is because we hear it every year. And in fact, in the 2 public hearings we have conducted during my tenure, we have heard it at the podium repeatedly, which is when you send correspondence as a practitioner or someone with power of attorney, could you please also send us a copy of that correspondence so that we know that our client has received it? Or could you send a carbon copy of it at the same time, for example? And as most know, that's expensive. We do not have free postage as a government entity, so as we try to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, we want to make sure that we aren't doubling our postage costs to send out letters and pieces of correspondence. So the solution to that, for those who will use InTime, which we hope will be everybody, is that the correspondence that we send will be posted in InTime within the person's or company's individual account. It'll be a secure message that will then get sent to the individual who's signed up for an account that will basically tell them, you have correspondence from the Department of Revenue waiting to be reviewed. Please log in and access it. Okay, now number 1, that is going to eliminate, for those that have an InTime account, it is going to eliminate the ability to tell us that we never sent it, or that it was never received, because it's going to be sitting right there in the computer. But also those that have power of attorney, those that have clients that they represent, that correspondence will be available for them as well, assuming that the client or the individual who has given them power of attorney clicks a simple button that gives them that access so that the correspondence is there waiting for them too. Okay? That way, they know when their client has received correspondence from the Department of Revenue. We think that will completely transform what we do on a day-to-day basis in terms of mail and correspondence. You can't imagine how many phone calls we have and how many customer interactions we experience where the conversation typically starts with, well, we sent you a letter, followed immediately by, I never got that. Or could you send that again? With modern technology and InTime as an e-services portal, we will greatly reduce, probably not eliminate, but greatly reduce that conversation from happening. That, in a nutshell, is Project Next Door. And that will take place over the next 3 to 3.5 years from now. But again, rollout 1 is coming on September 3rd of this year, and we are very excited about it. So to conclude my prepared remarks, I will simply add that I am just incredibly proud of our team here at the department, the collective effort to make improvements, streamline processes, revise policies to be more taxpayer friendly, and importantly, focusing on serving Indiana. Okay? We have nearly 700 Hoosiers doing their best to deliver great government service. okay? In many ways that they have never been asked to do so before. For some, for an entire career. How we are challenging them to approach their day-to-day assignments, serve customers, and take on additional responsibilities as we roll out Project Next Door. Again, I said the legacy system is still operating behind the scenes. So we're asking, in some cases, people to do double duty, all right? That is, however, a project that is long overdue. So, as others have heard me say, in the 2019 version of the Indiana Department of Revenue, the old expression, good enough for government, is not good enough for us. Okay? So thank you for listening. And at this time, I will turn things back over to Emily for the next portion of today's proceedings. Thank you.
At this time, we'll open up for public comment. Philip Jackson from the CPA Society is our first speaker. So Philip, if you want to come on up to the microphone, just press the button so that way when you see the green light, you're good to go.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Commissioner Crump and Indiana Department team members. My name is Philip Jackson, CPA, Chair of the Indiana CPA Society's Tax Resource Advisory Council. Thank you for this forum to provide these comments today. Let me first say congratulations on the department recently being named one of the Indy Star's top workplaces for 2019. Your vision of being recognized as the premier tax administrator in the nation and a great place to work seems to be coming to fruition. Additionally, under your leadership, it is evident that DOR staff strives to deliver best-in-class customer service. Thank you to you, your staff, team, who took this lofty charge at the beginning of your term as commissioner. The Indiana CPA Society and its members work closely with the department to identify and resolve systematic issues and potential areas for administrative improvements for Indiana taxpayers and our members who represent them. We believe there are always areas to improve upon, and will continue to work with the Indiana Department of Revenue team to address members' issues of concern. A primary area of concern is ensuring the collections process for taxpayers, working with the CPA to resolve the tax liability functions as designed. A second area of concern relates to communications to taxpayers and the representatives regarding requests for additional information for Schedule C items and providing an IRS transcript for amended returns. Taxpayers are notified shortly after filing a return with Schedule C and amended returns that additional documentation is required within extremely short time periods. Since it will be requested, this documentation should be required to be submitted as part of the return filing. If this information is needed, DOR should have the capability of accepting the requested documentation with the return. Both examples create angst on the part of taxpayers who often assume they're prepared to do something wrong. This process then requires time and work for practitioners who are likely not going to be compensated for their additional service. In preparing our comments for today, I realized supporting the development and transition to a modernized ITS system has been at the top of the Society's advocacy list for more than a decade. We applaud the efforts in bringing Project Next Door along as quickly as possible and support transparency and communications to taxpayers and the practitioner community. We emphasize the need to engage end users in planning and development, and not just in testing stages of the program. As we've stated before, but it bears repeating, project success depends on early and often end-user engagement enhancing functions, such as enhanced online payment history information to include payment date and tax rate, which actually you've already touched upon this morning. Enhanced functionality of the PDF submission to accept all PDF attachments, which would eliminate problematic issues with forms not supported by the current system. Expedite the processing of power returning forms from practitioners and providing practitioners with power returning with all notices and communications to taxpayer clients simultaneous to taxpayer notifications. Again, address earlier comments. As a member of the Commissioners Tax Advisory Council, formed in 2017, and chair of the Society's Tax Resource Advisory Council, I have a front seat to witness the innovative ways the Indiana Department of Revenue is improving service and providing transparency, fairness, and simplification to Indiana's taxpayers. Please continue aggressively upon this path. In closing, I would like to say thank you on behalf of our nearly 8,000 member CPAs and accounting professionals who are transforming business in Indiana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Philip. Patrick Patrick Thomas from the Notre Dame Tax Clinic. You're up. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your remarks. Very glad to be here today. I'm Patrick Thomas. I'm the director of the Notre Dame Tax Clinic and a professor of practice at the Notre Dame Law School. I'm also a member of the Commissioner's Tax Advisory Council with Philip and with Frank Petrio, who's the director of the Indiana Legal Services Low-Income Taxpayer Fund. Frank and I have again prepared a report, if you will, on the most serious issues in Indiana tax administration in 2019, much as we did last year. And that will be made available today to Emily for publication. It should appear in the minutes as it has in years past, in case any media are interested in perusing that. Before I get to the complaints, I do, like Philip, want to commend the department for its work really over the last 2 years. I remember being here, or maybe in a different conference room 2 years ago, a lot more full of angst than I am today. And that really speaks to the work that the department has done, particularly in collaborating with the practitioner community, and particularly our practitioner community for low-income taxpayers. The low-income taxpayer clinics in this state who represent clients with special needs in complying with Indiana's income tax laws. Throughout the past 2 years, we've been working with the department to make substantial improvements for these taxpayers, including increased flexibility in payment plans and increased options for resolving cases at the Taxpayer Advocate Office. I do want to mention a special shout out to the department. Last year, I mentioned the issue of being unable to bring filers into compliance who had 5 or 6 years of unfiled tax returns because we couldn't obtain their withholding information, their state tax withholding information from their employers for whatever reason. They had lost their W-2s, whatever the reason was. And the department, after some research that Bob Grinnis helpfully assisted us with, determined that the department concluded they couldn't legally release this information. While the department last year worked with the Indiana General Assembly to pass legislation that does allow the department to provide this information directly to taxpayers. And so effective July 1st of this year, the department has the lawful authority to do so. So I thank you all for that work, in particular Chris Russell, for working with the legislation, keeping us apprised of developments there. I will say, I talked to someone at a local office and they said, what authority? We have what authority? So maybe we can work on, or talk a little bit about training that's going on to implement that legislation, because I do plan on marching in there on July 1st or 2nd, trying to get some of my folks into compliance. So that's good stuff. Now, we've identified this year 8 issues that we perceive as very serious issues facing Hoosier taxpayers. Really facing all Hoosier taxpayers, but ones that particularly impact upon our low-income and ESL taxpayer communities. And I'm going to talk about 4 or 4.5 of these issues. Try not to take as long as that. And then Frank's going to follow up with a couple. So the ones I'm going to talk about are return filing complexity and the free file program. Second, I will talk about what I term math error adjustment notices that the department issues. Third, I'll talk about procedures in the Taxpayer Advocate's Office. And fourth, the quote-unquote innocent spouse procedures that the department has. So first I'm going to talk about return filing complexity and free file. And I'm glad the Commissioner talked a little bit about free file and provided some updated statistics for this filing season. It's like, couldn't find those on the website, so thank you for that. So what's free file? The commissioner really explained the idea behind free file. It's a service that the major commercial tax preparation software companies provide under a memorandum of understanding with the Internal Revenue Service. So as the commissioner noted, this has been around since 2003, and under this service with the Free File Alliance, or I'll call it Free File, this is a service that provides free tax preparation software to taxpayers. The idea is to provide it to taxpayers whose incomes fall in the bottom 70% of adjusted gross income. That's how the IRS markets it, that's how the department markets it, at least as of yesterday on the website, and that's how Free File itself markets it. In reality, however, under the Memorandum of Understanding with the IRS, 70% of taxpayers do not necessarily have access to this service. The terms of the memorandum are a little more persnickety than that. They state that each individual software company has to make available their service to between 10 and 50% of that bottom 70%. They're actually prohibited from making it available to all of that 70% block of taxpayers under the Memorandum of Understanding. And so that's why if you go to the IRS's Free File page, you'll see all this panoply of qualifications for individual plans. You can make under $33,000 in adjusted gross income one place, under $60,000 in another. There are age restrictions, geographic restrictions, and other restrictions depending on what the software company has decided to do with their product. So it's not necessarily the case that 70% of taxpayers are going to qualify, especially with state departments of revenue that have access to a more limited subset of those providers. I think Indiana has, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it 5 providers? And so,
That sounds right.
yeah.
Either 5 or 6.
Yeah. So the state return preparation throws a whole other layer of complexity into the situation. So while the IRS is a party to this memorandum of understanding, this department and all the other state departments of revenue really have to take it more on a take it or leave it kind of basis. Depending on whether the software company includes that state in the first instance in their in what they're providing. Under the terms of the Memorandum of Understanding, Free File does have to offer free state tax preparation and e-filing in all states that participate in the state Free File program. That's defined as programs in state that offer free preparation and e-filing of individual tax returns based on criteria that are materially consistent with the federal Free File program, and which do not provide taxpayer-funded online software for tax preparation and e-filing. So according to the department, and thank you, Bob, I have Bob to thank for a lot, there is no separate memorandum of understanding between this department or any other department and Free File. It's just a take it or leave it sort of approach is my understanding. So that's the lay of the land. So with that background, how many Hoosiers are using this? We heard the statistic from the commissioner. It's just north of 87,000, which does represent an increase from years past, which is great. I do think y'all have done a tremendous job in marketing the program as it exists to taxpayers. But it's still about, from my calculations, a 10%, 11% uptake rate of all eligible taxpayers, comparing that 87,000 figure to the 2 million, 2.2 million that you noted. And that, by the way, is higher than the IRS. So another, pat on the back for you. 5 times higher than the IRS figure is nothing to shake a stick at, but it's still 11% of all eligible taxpayers, taking that 70% figure. Why is that so? It's so, the National Taxpayer Advocate reports, one, because the IRS doesn't do a great job marketing the program, so that's not really anything you can control. but also because some of the companies involved with Free File engage in confusing cross-marketing practices of fee-based products. We also have recent investigative reporting from ProPublica that was out this spring that shed some further light on this question. Certain Free File companies engage in deceptive marketing and internal practices to steer qualifying taxpayers away from Free File and towards their paid tax return preparation services. For example, these companies hid the landing pages for their Free File product from Google searches. They linked their sponsored ads in Google searches to their paid product. For example, if you search for file taxes for free, which is how most of my clients would try to find that, you're not going to get the IRS Free File landing page or the department's landing page. You're going to get a link to a paid product that may market itself as free, but may only really be free for the most simple of tax compliance situations. These companies also marketed their products to military filers who did qualify to file for free, but again, they were directed to a paid product, and they also provided internal guidance to their employees to steer qualifying taxpayers away from Free File and again towards the paid product. The CEO of one prominent Free File provider stated that the company has no plans to change its practices in light of this reporting. And largely due to this reporting and its resulting backlash, an IRS reform bill that would have codified the Free File Memorandum of Understanding was just altered this week and passed the Senate to exclude that language. And finally, the IRS Commissioner has promised to re-examine the Free File program and has hired an outside consultant to do so. It's a little too much, a little rush. All right. So, and our own clients complain about the complex and confusing journeys that they go through in attempting to file a tax return for free. The vast majority of my clients qualify for Free File, just as they qualify for services in our clinic. But many who I talk to this filing season, have ended up getting caught in one of the traps mentioned, or otherwise they didn't know about Free File, and so used a paid preparer or some other service. No matter the department's excellence in marketing this product, this uptake rate is unlikely to change, or is likely to plateau at some point. Without systemic changes to how Free File companies themselves market and operate their Free File products, and their profit motives provide a strong disincentive for them to do so. So I'm sorry this is a little long-winded, but as you can see, I'm on a bit of a soapbox about this issue. This background provides some strong reasons for this department to reconsider its own relationship with Free File. It's not just something for the IRS to deal with. There are states that don't participate in Free File. It's not as if the department does not have a choice. And as the Commissioner noted, the department has recently been recognized as a leader in state revenue tax administration in the country. So lead on this issue. Lead on this issue. The department should examine the wholesale relationship with Free File and should specifically examine whether it's in the long-term interest of Hoosiers to continue participation in the program. Therefore, that's one of our recommendations. Another one of our recommendations is that as part of Project Nexo or another long-term project, the department should consider implementing an optional return-free tax compliance system for individual taxpayers who are full-year residents in the state of Indiana. If the department chooses to continue its collaboration with Free File, two recommendations. One, should market Free File in a clear manner so that taxpayers understand the potential pitfalls that they may encounter in accessing and using a truly free filing product. Second, the department should place a disclaimer on their Free File landing page notifying taxpayers that merely because they've been allowed to file a free federal tax return doesn't necessarily guarantee that that software company will provide a free state tax return.
Okay, that's all I have on that issue.
Oh, okay.
Are we still on issue one?
We are now on issue 2.
Just making sure.
Yeah, we are now on issue 2. So the second issue I want to raise has to do with what I call math error adjustment notices. And I'm going to provide, again, a little bit of background so we all understand this. So the department audits taxpayers' tax return, has to conclude that audit either with a proposed adjustment, telling the taxpayer that they believe that the taxpayer owes additional tax. Or, of course, a letter saying, good job, you satisfied our audit, you don't owe any additional tax. If the department also, as it does now, freezes a refund during an audit and concludes that the taxpayer can qualify for that refund, the department has to issue a formal refund denial. And these are both provisions under the Indiana Code. Both of these notices must apprise the taxpayer of their right to an administrative hearing with the department's legal division and the time frame within which they have under the Indiana Code to request that hearing. So the department has a form AR 80 for proposed assessments. They also have a fairly standard letter for refund claim denials. But the department, in my experience, doesn't always use those forms to do these things as it must under the Indiana Code. Instead, it has issued a number of my taxpayers this adjustment notice, map error adjustment notice. I call it that because it's similar to an analogous proceeding that the IRS uses when there's some sort of mathematical error on the tax return. And, it makes sense to correct taxpayers' mathematical errors on the tax return. We can take 2 + 2 = 5 and make it 4. And I think that's good customer service in so doing. But it's more problematic when we use that notice to make substantive changes to tax returns. And during this filing season, I had a number of taxpayers fall into that situation where this notice was used to make substantive changes. And I've attached these notices as Exhibits A, B1, B2, and B3 to this report. I'm going to go on to explain why I find the notice problematic. The notice generally fails to effectively apprise taxpayers of the substantive changes to their tax return. It lists line-by-line changes on the I-240, and there's a column for original change and reason for change. And the reason for change is always adjusted to agree with our records. And that doesn't really tell you much. And when taxpayers get these, they can't tell what the heck's going on. They've got to go to a trained, seasoned tax practitioner to explain the notice to them. And even I have to do a little digging to figure out exactly what this notice means. So that's initially problematic. And just as examples, in my notices, or in my client's notices, one, the department used to conclude an audit, which resulted in a complete refund disallowance. The other denied a deduction for unemployment compensation. Two others denied credit for tax withheld, and another actually increased the standard deduction. So thank you for that. But hard to tell from the face of the notice. Second, the notice signals to the taxpayer that they now owe tax because it is framed in a way that where there's a payment stub on the back side bottom of the notice with a handy calculation of all the amounts that are due and the address to send the stub with your check. And so that signals to ordinary folks, okay, I owe this money, I better pay it. It's the government, they'll put me in jail. So, of course we know that, never. So that's an additional issue with this notice. Finally, you simply can't use the notice in place of a proposed assessment or formal refund denial. The language of the notice doesn't provide the necessary statutory information that's required in the Indiana Code. And so if I see an assessment that's been made pursuant to one of these notices without the required forms, I'm going to challenge that in some creative way because it's a void, it's simply a void assessment. No lawful collection activity can take place subsequent to an assessment that had no lawful basis. So if you continue to use it, make it more intelligible to taxpayers so that they know what's going on. I know Tammy and I have talked about this notice, and I appreciate the work we've been doing on that, trying to understand how to message that to taxpayers in a better way. Second, reformat it so it doesn't look like a bill. And third, make sure you're issuing the statutorily required notices under the Indiana Code. Okay, got you down. 2 to go. Third, I want to talk about procedures in the taxpayer advocate office. We've been working over the past 24 months on figuring out the rules applicable to and the public guidance for offers in compromise and hardship payment programs. I know we've made some progress on aligning on what those procedures ought to be. We've had lots of conversations, but it's my feeling, and I think Frank agrees with me, we're still not there. Still don't know what exactly will constitute an offer in compromise or a hardship application that has a chance of success, because there are no standards, discernible standards that I can see that I can draft an offer or draft a hardship status request on. And when we do our best and submit what we can, we regularly get letters denying our mostly offers in compromise that contain no reasoning. Just got one in the mail today, this morning, and I'm going to print off the report, so that was serendipitous. It says, after careful review, we've denied your offer for compromise settlement. We've determined that the compromise offer of, we went a little low, okay, $10.51 is not reasonable compared to the current balance of $15,000. There's context behind that for why we did that. And it says, so that's the analysis, not reasonable. Okay. Doesn't tell us much. Based on the information above, you have no remaining monthly income to make a payment to the department for this debt. So your case has been converted to a hardship case and will remain on hold for 12 months. At the end of that time, our office will contact you to conduct a review of your current situation. So you're going to hold this case for 12 months. He's going to be in the same shape he's in 12 months. And are we going to check in another 12 months? And another? And spend your employees' time on checking in on a guy whose financial situation is not going to improve? Or are we going to just do something to put this behind the department and put this behind this taxpayer? That's my preference. If we need to look at increasing the amount of that offer, okay, let's have a discussion about that, about what seems reasonable. This is not. Kicking the can down the road indefinitely is not reasonable. All right. And Frank has some of these notices too. It's not just me. All right, I'm almost there. Oh, by the way, it wasn't copied on the notice.
That's coming.
I know. I'm glad to hear. But not till 2021 for individual taxpayers, right? All right, so we need to work on training of employees in the meantime, because I know we've adopted a policy to copy, but that's hit or miss still. Almost done, I promise. All right, let's talk about innocent spouse. So, again, a little bit of background for you. I'm sorry, law professor, I do. So, the Internal Revenue Code establishes joint and several liability for any tax debt reported on a joint tax year. It doesn't matter who caused the tax debt, the IRS can go after them jointly and separately. The IRS does have a statutory safety valve, though, in the form of innocent spouse relief. And generally, if one spouse didn't know about what caused the underlying debt, or didn't have reason to know, and this item that caused the debt was attributable to the other spouse, and it's inequitable to not grant relief, the IRS will say, okay, spouse, you're not liable anymore, go on your merry way, we're going to solely focus on this other spouse. Okay, that's the Internal Revenue Code. Indiana Code, on the other hand, doesn't work like that. The Indiana Code does not establish joint and several liability for jointly filed tax returns. It specifically provides for the opposite. Indiana Code 6-3-4-2 states, where a joint return is filed by a husband and wife or under, one spouse shall have no liability for the tax imposed by this article upon the income of the other spouse. That's it. Can't find anything else in the code that speaks to that liability otherwise. So it works very differently than the Internal Revenue Code does. And so it protects spouses in the first instance. They don't necessarily have to go and request this discretionary relief subject to all these multi-factor balancing tests that the IRS has. It is what it is. Nevertheless, the department does commonly issue joint tax liabilities stemming from a jointly filed state income tax return. It does provide what's called an innocent spouse process. There's a form, IN-40SP, to apply for innocent spouse relief. The document calls for the taxpayer to provide W-2 and 1099 forms, a copy of their federal income tax return, a copy of their Indiana tax return, copies of a federal innocent spouse approval, if applicable, and provide a detailed letter describing why he or she feels they're entitled to innocent spouse protection. There are 4 issues with this procedure. First, you've already got a lot of this information. So we want to be careful, I think, about requesting duplicative information from taxpayers in these sorts of circumstances. So you should already have the Indiana tax return. I hope. Also, again, hopefully we have that W-2 or 1099 information, but maybe you need to include it in case an employer's forgot to file or something like that. Second, there's no basis at all for requiring a letter as to why this person feels entitled to innocent spouse relief. It's not discretionary. There's nothing that has to do with someone's knowledge or inequity or anything. It's simple. One spouse doesn't have liability for the tax imposed upon the income of another. That's it. You just gotta look at the income, split the difference, and that's it. The instructions on a similar vein, as the third issue, are confusing and may mislead taxpayers into believing they don't qualify for relief. They say you may qualify as an innocent spouse if the IRS granted you relief as an innocent spouse. Well, yeah, but that process is a lot more discretionary. The spouse's knowledge is likewise irrelevant, the knowledge of the underreported income or the income in general. And the rest of the instructions are likewise under-inclusive of situations that may qualify for relief under the code. And finally, turnaround time for innocent spouse relief request is, in our experiences, can be 120 days or more. This wait can be too long for low-income taxpayers in need of immediate relief from unlawful collection activity. So I have a proposal, which I should say we have a proposal, this is my ideal, that you would simply scrap this post-filing separation of liability and create a new schedule for the IT-40 that allocates items of income deduction and credits among spouses filing a joint return. Most spouses who go to a paid tax return preparer or who prepare their returns online are going to tag these items in that regard anyway in the software. So it shouldn't be too monumental of a task to create a form that's filed with the return that can do this in advance. And following on that, you would not create a joint liability, but create 2 separate liabilities that are based on the separate taxes of both taxpayers. So that's my initial suggestion as a road that you want to explore, because I think that would save a lot of time on the back end and would be amenable to the really non-discretionary process that the Indiana Code requires. If you don't choose to go down that road, you need to look at the innocent spouse relief form, redraft it with clear instructions for taxpayers such that more taxpayers who qualify can submit the form, and to allow for a quicker turnaround time. If we don't really need all this documentation, that's time for the taxpayer to gather it and time from your employees to process it. All right, that's all I've got, guys. Thank you for your time. Yeah, no, Frank's going to cover a few other things. Again, I do want to conclude this, thank you for your time today and your commitment to working with all of us over the past few years. We very much look forward to improving Indiana tax administration for Hooters in 2019 and years to come.
Thank you.
Frank, do you want to come up and speak?
Sure, I got drafted.
I know you told me you weren't going to.
I wasn't planning. Sorry.
You're welcome.
So I'll be very brief, since Mike does a great job, and we do a lot of our comments in writing. I'm gonna go quickly to injured spouse. The difference between innocent spouse and that's talking about injured spouse is that the spouse that's not responsible for tax debt happens with remarriages or even other debts such as state Department of Education loans, child support. The spouse that's not responsible for that debt should not have to pay the other spouse's debt. That's called injured spouse. The federal government has a form, it's 8379, that you preemptively file with your tax return when it's filed as a return that allows that portion of the refund to the non-debt spouse to go to that taxpayer. While that's something that's not unfortunately taking place with the state of Indiana, there's no procedures that I found. I was able to get in touch with Tammy Jones and found out recently that you can request it through TAO, but I couldn't find this anywhere on the website or any other written guidance. And it's something that needs to be brought up. Maybe it should be done pre-filing the return, like the IRS, instead of post-file. What happens now, I believe, and I've never seen this notice, I assume it's being issued, is that you got to notice that your tax return is being offset to pay some debt, again, either state income tax or state Department of Education loan, and then you have 20 days or 30 days to request the claiming agency not take your money with the department. There's some discrepancy. Does it go to the claiming agency, such as like Ivy Tech University, or if it goes to the department? But it's very confusing. I have not been able to figure it out. I've actually tried to do this through innocent spouse procedures. So I think the policy needs to be publicized. There needs to be a form so that we can do it and it can be efficiently created, and also should be referenced on the notices that go out to the joint taxpayers. It's not as come from as innocent spouse, but it is a problem out there. Again, according to the code, when you file a joint tax return, one spouse is not liable for the other spouse's debt. So that's it. The other one deals with vehicle lease. The department has to notify the Indiana code the Bureau of Motor Vehicles if somebody has a tax liability of $50 or more. One is issued under the statutes, and a lien is then placed on the title of the car, which is fine. The problem is what happens when there are junk vehicles that are no longer drivable because there's been an accident, there's no collision insurance, so it's just sitting in a motor vehicle lot or on somebody's property because it's undrivable. You cannot do anything with that vehicle unless the tax debt is paid to the department. What if the tax debt bill is $5,000? Well, the car is worth $20. Nobody will touch that vehicle because they cannot obtain clear title. In the past ILS, my employer, we've had to contact the department's attorneys to get this resolved. There is supposedly a procedure in place that allows you to contact the department and then they may issue a notice. I'm not sure. And we've had this come up where taxpayers have said, well, should I just tow the vehicle to the government state house and put it there and let them take it? Vehicles are undrivable. They're not trying to get any money. They're trying to either donate it or they're willing to get anything that they can and give that to the department. That money to the department from a salvage company, cars for kids, or whatever it is. So there needs to be, again, something, it's all about transparency, something on place on the website to make not only taxpayers comfortable with what's going on, but also the purchasers of these vehicles. Again, we're talking about undrivable vehicles. There's no value. If there is, I donated a car recently and I got $200. That money is, we're willing to give that money, the taxpayers are willing to give that money to the department, so it's revenue to you guys, but they can't do it because the bill is, let's say, $5,000. So again, the purchaser of the vehicle cannot obtain clear title. So something, a procedure needs to be done, maybe for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Always confused if the department runs the Bureau of Motor Vehicles or not, but something needs to be put in place to allow these vehicles to be donated or transferred and money to be done. Everything else is in our report. Again, thank you for allowing us to submit it. I think you guys really follow the recommendations and we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
No other public comment. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you for everybody that was able to attend. We appreciate it.